The alien empire had survived. The enemy, once so bold and clever, had finally retreated beyond the farthest stars. The palace, though scarred by fire and battle, still stood tall. Its towers reflected the three moons, casting long shadows over the city below. Inside the palace, Queen Vera walked quietly through the halls. The celebrations of victory were loud outside, but inside, she felt only a heavy silence. Her heart was full not with pride, but with a deep, unshakable regret. At her side, Ryan moved steadily, silent as always. The human guard who had once knelt in humiliation now stood as the savior of the empire. He had guided strategies, led defenses, and saved countless lives. Yet no one outside her chamber knew the full truth of his deeds. The queen stopped at the balcony overlooking the city. Fires had been put out, and the streets were quiet except for distant cheers. She gazed at the stars above, remembering the many times she had dismissed humans as weak, small, and unimportant. She whispered, almost to herself, "How blind I was." Ryan remained silent, understanding her words without needing to speak. His calm presence reminded her of every lesson she had learned too late: strength is not always visible, loyalty is not bought by fear, and courage can appear even in the smallest of beings. That evening, the queen held a private audience with her surviving commanders. She instructed them to rebuild the empire not just with power, but with wisdom. Supply lines were to be carefully guarded, fleets organized with human-like precision, and tactics designed for patience and observation, not only brute strength. When she spoke of these plans, the commanders looked shocked. Some whispered, questioning her new trust in a human guard. But she ignored their doubts. In her heart, she knew the truth that could no longer be denied: Ryan had changed the fate of the empire, and she could not undo what he had done. Later, in the quiet of the palace, the queen approached Ryan. He stood near the central hall, cleaning his spear, his armor still scarred from battles past. "Ryan," she said softly, "the empire lives because of you. I cannot erase what I did to you before. I cannot undo the shame I caused. But I can give you respect, and honor beyond what anyone has offered." Ryan lowered his head slightly. "I do not seek reward, my queen. I only serve." Her chest tightened. She could not speak the full weight of her regret: the years of pride, the humiliation, the blindness to his worth. She only nodded, letting silence carry the words that could not be spoken. The next day, the queen stood before her people. Her voice echoed across the palace square. She praised the defenders of the empire, highlighting the courage and skill of every soldier, human and alien alike. But she did not single out Ryan in front of everyone. She knew some honors could never erase what had been done. Some truths were meant only for the heart. Ryan watched silently from the side. He did not need recognition. His satisfaction came from seeing the empire survive, the people safe, and the queen finally understanding a truth he had always known: that humans were more than their size, more than their weakness, more than anyone could have imagined. In the quiet moments, the queen thought about what had passed. She had ruled with power, with fear, and with pride, but Ryan had shown her that strength could also be quiet, unseen, and patient. The lesson weighed on her like a shadow: she had been too slow to see it, and that delay had cost her pride, and nearly her empire. She carried the regret in her heart, a reminder that even rulers could be wrong, and that wisdom sometimes comes from those we least expect. Weeks later, the palace resumed its normal life. Towers gleamed, walls were repaired, and the empire appeared stronger than ever. Yet in her private chambers, Queen Vera could not forget the small human who had taught her so much. She remembered every glance, every calm order, every act of courage. "Humans," she whispered, "their strength lies not in what I can take from them, but in what they carry within themselves." Ryan heard her words, though he did not respond. He understood her meaning, and he understood her regret. The empire had survived. The enemy had gone. Victory was theirs. Yet the queen would never forget what she had done to the one human who had proven the greatest strength of all. And so, though the empire flourished, Queen Vera carried her forever regret, a quiet reminder of humility, wisdom, and the power of a human's heart. For in the end, humans had shown that true strength is not in fear, not in size, not in power but in loyalty, courage, and quiet resilience. And that truth would remain, unbroken, forever. The day of the peace talks began with bright skies over Vera. The palace guards lined the shining gates, their armor catching the morning light. Servants rushed to prepare the great hall, while nobles whispered among themselves about the unusual guests. The humans had arrived. Their ship had landed on the royal landing field, smaller than the grand vessels of other empires, but smooth and sturdy. A group of 12 humans stepped out, dressed in neat uniforms. They did not carry weapons, only devices for speaking and recording. Compared to the tall and broad Varans, the humans looked modest, but their eyes were sharp and curious. Among them walked a man named Samir. He was not a soldier or a great leader. He was a translator, someone chosen for his knowledge of alien languages. His task was simple, to help humans and Varans understand one another's words. Samir's eyes moved quickly as he entered the palace. The ceilings stretched higher than anything he had ever seen on Earth, carved with patterns that glowed faintly in the light. The walls carried tapestries showing battles, victories, and great kings of the past. Yet despite all the beauty, he noticed the coldness in the eyes of the nobles who watched them. The Varans were proud, and to them, humans were small and weak. The king of Vera greeted the human delegation with steady words. Promises of peace were spoken, trade routes discussed, and agreements planned. Samir carefully translated where needed, his calm voice carrying across the room. Though the nobles did not respect the humans, the king treated them with formality. As the talks went on, Samir listened not only with his ears but with his heart. He could sense tension hidden beneath polite words. The Varans wanted to show strength. The humans wanted to show respect. It was a careful dance of pride and caution. But as hours passed, Samir's mind drifted to something he had overheard the night before. While the delegation rested in their quarters, a young servant had whispered a story to him. She spoke of the princess of Vera, blind, fragile, and alone. No knight dares bond with her, the servant had whispered sadly. She sits in her chamber, forgotten. Some say her life is a sorrow to the throne. Samir had been struck by the words. A princess, abandoned by her own people? It sounded wrong to him. On Earth, weakness was not shameful, it was part of being human. And yet, here on Vera, this princess was left behind, as if she were invisible. The thought stayed with him through the peace talks. Each time he looked at the proud nobles, he wondered how they could ignore one of their own. That evening, after the long meeting, a grand banquet was prepared in the humans' honor. Tables were filled with shining plates and glowing fruits from distant gardens. Musicians played deep, resonant tones that echoed across the hall. Nobles laughed and raised their cups, but Samir did not join fully in the celebration. Instead, he found himself staring at the empty seat beside the queen. There should have been a princess there, he thought. Every royal family showed their heirs during such events. Why was she missing? He turned to one of the servants carrying a tray and quietly asked, "Does the princess never attend the banquets?" The servant lowered his voice. "She is in her chamber. She does not come before the guests. It is, the way of things." Samir frowned. The way of things. To him, it sounded like neglect. He sipped his drink slowly, but his mind was already turning. Later, when the banquet ended and the humans were led back to their guest rooms, Samir could not rest. The story of the blind princess pulled at him like a thread he could not cut. At last, he approached one of the palace attendants and made a request no outsider had ever dared. "I wish to meet Princess Lyra," he said plainly. The attendant froze. That is not possible, he whispered. She does not receive visitors. Not even her people. Samir asked. The man shook his head, uncomfortable. Especially not outsiders. But Samir did not give up. His tone was calm but firm. Tell the king my request. I mean no disrespect. I only wish to speak with her. The attendant hesitated for a long moment, then finally bowed and left. That night, the palace buzzed with whispers. Nobles could not believe it. A human, one of the smallest, weakest guests, had asked to see the princess no one dared to approach. In her chamber, Lyra sat by her window as usual, listening to the distant hum of the palace. When her maid nervously told her the news, she lifted her head in surprise. A human wishes to meet me, she asked softly. The maid nodded. Yes, princess. His name is Samir. Lyra touched the smooth edge of her chair, uncertain. All her life, her people had avoided her. No warrior wanted her. No noble sought her. And now, an outsider, someone from another world, wanted to speak with her. For the first time in many years, her heart stirred with something new. It was not hope yet, but it was close. Then let him come, she whispered. And in that quiet moment, the first steps toward a bond unlike any other began to form. The next morning, the palace halls were filled with quiet tension. Word had spread quickly, the human translator had asked to meet the blind princess. Nobles whispered in disbelief. Guards frowned, unsure if such a meeting should be allowed. Still, the king had given his permission. Perhaps it was curiosity, or perhaps a small part of him wanted to see what this unusual human would do. Either way, the order was clear: the human named Samir would be brought to Princess Lyra's private chamber. Samir walked carefully behind a palace guide, his heart steady but curious. He had spoken to warriors, nobles, and even kings, but this was different. This was not politics. This was personal. As he entered the quiet corridor that led to Lyra's room, he noticed how the noise of the palace faded. Here, the air was calm, almost heavy with silence. The guard stopped at a tall carved door and gave a short bow. The princess waits, he said. Samir stepped inside. The chamber was dim, lit only by soft blue lamps along the walls. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air. Near the window sat Princess Lyra, dressed in a flowing silver robe. Her pale eyes, though unseeing, were turned toward the sound of his footsteps. Samir paused, bowing slightly. Princess Lyra, he said gently. For a moment, there was silence. Then Lyra spoke, her voice soft but clear. So it is true. A human has come to see me. Her maid moved closer, as if to guide her, but Lyra lifted her hand. Leave us, she said. The maid hesitated, then bowed and stepped out. Now only Lyra and Samir remained in the chamber. Samir approached slowly, not too close, not too far. He did not want to startle her. Yes, he said with a small smile, though she could not see it. I asked to meet you. I hope that is not unwelcome. Lyra tilted her head slightly. It is unusual. No one asks for me. Samir sat on a chair near hers. Then perhaps that is why I should, he said softly. I heard of you. And I thought it was wrong that you sit here alone, while the world outside pretends you do not exist. Lyra was quiet. She ran her fingers lightly over the armrest of her chair, a habit of hers when she thought deeply. Most do not speak to me so directly. They use careful words, or they stay silent. But you sound almost angry for me. Samir nodded. Maybe I am. Where I come from, being different does not make someone worthless. It only makes them human. Or, perhaps I should say, it makes them alive. For the first time in many days, Lyra smiled faintly. Alive, she repeated. That is a word I like. But tell me, Samir, what do you see when you look at me? Samir thought for a moment. I see a princess with silver robes and calm strength in her face. I see someone who listens more carefully than anyone else I've met. And I see someone who carries too much silence on her shoulders. Lyra's fingers froze. No one had ever described her in such a way. Most spoke only of her blindness, her weakness. But this human had noticed something else: her strength in listening, her patience in silence. You describe me as if I were more than my eyes, she whispered. You are, Samir said firmly. Lyra's chest tightened with a strange feeling. For years she had told herself she needed nothing. That loneliness was simply her fate. But this human's words touched something hidden inside her. She leaned slightly forward. Tell me, Samir, what is Earth like? Describe it to me. Samir's eyes lit up. Earth is full of colors. The skies can be bright blue, or red at sunset, or golden in autumn. The oceans are endless, deep, and alive. Forests are filled with voices of birds and winds moving through leaves. And in the night, the stars shine like a million tiny lamps. As he spoke, Lyra closed her eyes, though they had never shown her sight. She could hear his voice painting pictures in her mind. She could almost feel the wind of his forests, almost hear the call of his birds. Your words, she whispered. They make me see without seeing. Samir smiled. Then I will keep telling you stories. I will be your eyes, if you wish. Lyra's heart trembled. She had met many people in her life, but never had anyone spoken such words to her. A human, an outsider, had given her what her own people never had, the feeling of being seen, even in her blindness. The room grew quiet again, but it was no longer the heavy silence of loneliness. It was the gentle silence of two people sharing something new. Finally, Lyra spoke again. Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. Samir, will you return tomorrow? Samir nodded at once. If you allow it, princess, I will return as many times as you wish. For the first time in many years, Lyra's lips curved into a true smile. Not a polite smile for the court, but a real one, born from hope. Yes, she said. Come back tomorrow. And with those words, something rare and fragile was born in the quiet chamber, a bond that had not yet been named, but one that would change both their lives forever. The days that followed were unlike anything Princess Lyra had known before. Each morning, after the formal peace talks ended, Samir would find his way to her chamber. The guards looked at him with suspicion, and the nobles whispered in the halls, but no one stopped him. The king, though puzzled, did not forbid the visits. Perhaps he wished to see what this strange friendship would bring. When Samir entered the quiet chamber, Lyra always turned her head toward him, listening to his steps. She could now recognize the rhythm of his walk, light but steady. His presence brought warmth to a place that had long been cold. They would sit together near the window. Lyra would rest her hands on the smooth frame, feeling the air, while Samir spoke. At first, he told her of Earth, the rivers that shimmered like silver under the sun, the snow that fell like soft feathers from the sky, the mountains that stood proud and silent. Lyra listened with her whole heart. Though her eyes could not see, her mind built pictures from his words. You make the world sound alive, she said one afternoon. As if every sound and color has a soul. Samir smiled. Perhaps it does. You already know this better than most. You hear what others ignore. Lyra tilted her head. Do you believe so? I do, Samir replied. When I walk through the palace, I only hear noise. But you, princess, can tell if someone is happy or sad just from their footsteps. That is not weakness. That is a gift. Lyra felt her chest tighten. No one had ever called her blindness a gift. For years, it had been treated as her shame. Yet here was this human, speaking as if she were more than her limits. Slowly, she began to open her heart to him. She told him of her childhood, how she would sit by the gardens and listen to the fountains, imagining their shapes. How she dreamed of flying ships though she had never seen one. And how the nobles never spoke to her unless duty forced them. Sometimes, she admitted in a low voice, I wonder if I truly belong in this palace. Or if I am only here because I was born to the king. Samir's voice was calm but firm. You belong, princess. Not because of your crown, but because of who you are. Even if they cannot see your worth, it is still there. His words reached deeper than he knew. Lyra had lived her life surrounded by silence, but Samir filled it with sound, not the sound of pity, but of truth. As the days passed, their connection grew. Samir began to notice small details about Lyra that others ignored. He noticed how her fingers traced the patterns on her chair when she thought. He noticed how she tilted her head to catch even the softest sound. He noticed the faint smile she gave when she was curious but shy. And Lyra noticed him too. She could hear the honesty in his voice, the steadiness of his breath, the kindness hidden in his pauses. She realized that while her people had eyes, they often failed to truly see. Samir, though human and simple, saw her without sight. One evening, when the palace outside was filled with the noise of another banquet, Samir told her a story. On earth, he began, there was once a poet who could not walk. Many thought he was broken, but he used his mind to write words that touched thousands. People still remember him centuries later. His weakness did not stop him. It shaped him. Lyra sat quietly, listening. The story touched her because it sounded so much like her own life. And you think? I could be like him. Samir leaned forward slightly. I think you already are. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. But it was no longer heavy silence. It was soft, like a blanket around them. Yet beyond those walls, the whispers of the nobles grew louder. Many did not understand why a human spent so much time with their princess. Some mocked quietly. Others worried it was shameful. But Samir did not care, and neither did Lyra. One night, after Samir left, Lyra's maid spoke nervously. Princess, people are saying things. They think it's strange, this bond with the human. Lyra only smiled faintly. Let them speak. For the first time in my life, I am not alone. That is worth more than their words. She lay down that night with a lighter heart. The palace walls no longer felt like a cage. For the first time, she had something to look forward to. Samir would return tomorrow. And when he did, he would bring with him not only stories of Earth, but the feeling that she was alive, truly alive. Neither of them knew that their bond, quiet and fragile, would soon be tested by forces far greater than gossip. But for now, in those stolen hours by the window, they had found something rare, trust, and a connection beyond sight. The peace talks between the humans and the Varans continued for many days. Trade routes were discussed, promises of cooperation were written, and words of respect were exchanged. But outside the palace walls, trouble was rising. A neighboring empire, the Draxian Dominion, had always envied Vera's wealth. When news reached them that the princess was blind and weak, and that no warrior dared bond with her, they saw an opportunity. To them, Vera's royal bloodline looked vulnerable. One morning, a Draxian envoy arrived at the palace gates, his voice loud and mocking. If your kingdom is so strong, he sneered, then why is your heir a blind girl? You hide her away like a shameful secret. Give her to us, and we will show her a place fitting for weakness. The court erupted in anger, but the Draxian envoy only laughed. Or prove us wrong. Show us she is not a burden. If she can stand with a champion at her side, we will honor her. If not, you prove your weakness before all. The challenge spread like fire through the palace. Nobles shook their heads in worry. Soldiers clenched their fists in shame. And Princess Lyra, sitting quietly in her chamber, heard every word through her sharp ears. That evening, Samir entered her room to find her troubled. She sat still by the window, her hands pressed tightly together. "Lyra," he asked gently. "What is wrong?" She lifted her face toward him. "They want me gone," she whispered. "The Draxians say I am proof of weakness. They demand I be handed over, or that I show I am not useless. But how can I? I cannot fight. I cannot even walk the halls without help." Her voice broke, and for the first time since meeting him, Samir saw tears gather at the corners of her pale eyes. He stepped closer, his voice steady. "You are not useless. And you will not be handed over." Lyra shook her head. "You do not understand. My people already doubt me. No knight has ever chosen to bond with me. To them, I am only a shadow in the palace. How can I prove otherwise?" Samir's hands tightened into fists. He had listened long enough to the whispers and the cruelty. Now his heart burned with quiet fire. "Then I will stand with you," he said. Lyra froze. "You?" "Yes." His voice was calm but firm. "I may not be a knight or a Veyran warrior. But I will not let them call you worthless. If this is a trial of courage, then let me be your partner. I will fight for you." Her lips parted in disbelief. "You would bond with me, when even my own people will not." Samir nodded. "Because I see you, Lyra. Not your eyes, not your weakness, but you. And you deserve someone who will not turn away." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Lyra let out a soft, trembling breath. Her heart, which had carried years of loneliness, felt as if a new flame had been lit inside it. The next day, when the court gathered in the grand hall, Samir stepped forward before all. The king, the nobles, the Draxian envoy, and even the humans from Earth watched in shock as the translator spoke. "I will bond with Princess Lyra," Samir declared. "Not out of pity, but out of truth. She is not weak. Together, we will show you what strength truly means." Gasps spread across the hall. Nobles whispered furiously. Some laughed at the idea a human, a translator, daring to claim the princess. The Draxian envoy smirked, certain this would end in humiliation. But Lyra rose from her seat. Guided by her sharp hearing, she stepped toward Samir and held out her hand. Her pale eyes faced the hall as she spoke with quiet strength. "You call me blind," she said. "But it is you who cannot see. This human has given me more vision than any of you. If he chooses to stand with me, then I accept. We are bonded, not by tradition, but by trust." The hall grew silent. For the first time in her life, Lyra's voice carried not shame, but power. The Draxian envoy narrowed his eyes. "Very well. Then let it be tested. Tomorrow, we place you both in trial. If you succeed, your bond is honored. If you fail, she comes with us." The king's face was dark with worry, but he gave a slow nod. He could not refuse without losing face before the court. That night, Lyra sat with Samir once more in her chamber. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "Tomorrow, we face their trial. I fear I will fail you." Samir shook his head. "No. Tomorrow, we face it together. You will guide me with your hearing, and I will fight with my hands. Alone, we may fall. But together, we will stand." For the first time, Lyra felt hope instead of fear. She placed her hand in his, gripping it tightly. "Then let us stand," she whispered. And so, under the silent stars above Veyra, a princess and a human prepared for a challenge that would decide more than their bond. It would decide their worth before two empires. The next morning, the entire palace gathered in the trial grounds. It was a wide stone arena surrounded by high walls and rows of seats. The Draxian envoy sat proudly in the front, his sharp eyes filled with confidence. Nobles of Vero whispered among themselves, waiting to see the human fail. Soldiers crossed their arms, doubtful that this simple outsider could face the challenge. At the center of the arena stood Samir and Princess Lyra. Samir's heart beat fast, but he stood tall. He had no armor, no advanced weapons, only a simple staff given to him by the guards. Beside him, Lyra rested her hand lightly on his arm. Though she could not see the crowd, she could hear every whisper, every laugh. Yet she held her head high. The Draxian envoy raised his voice. The trial is simple. You will face the beast of the caves. If you can survive together, your bond is proven. If not, the princess comes with us. A heavy gate creaked open. From the shadows, a low growl echoed. The crowd fell silent. Slowly, a creature stepped into the light. It was massive, with thick dark scales and glowing red eyes. Its claws scraped against the stone floor, and its tail lashed like a whip. The beast sniffed the air, then roared so loudly the walls trembled. Samir's hands tightened around his staff. His body shook, but he did not move back. Lyra, though blind, stood steady beside him. She could hear the beast's every step, every breath. Samir, she whispered calmly, listen to me. Do not look only with your eyes. Follow my words. The beast lunged forward with frightening speed. The crowd gasped. Samir raised his staff, but at the last moment Lyra cried, left. He trusted her instantly. He stepped aside, and the beast's claws slashed only air. The crowd shouted in surprise. Again the beast circled them, its tail sweeping across the floor. Samir could not track it fast enough, but Lyra's sharp ears caught the movement. Duck, she called. Samir dropped low, and the tail whooshed above his head. He rolled, coming up to strike the beast's side with his staff. The blow was small against the creature's thick scales, but it was enough to show they could fight back. The Draxian envoy frowned. The nobles leaned forward, whispering louder now. Again and again, the beast attacked. And again, Lyra guided Samir. Step back. Strike now, to the right. Move. Jump forward. Her voice was clear, steady, and precise. Samir followed without question, his trust in her absolute. Each time, they narrowly avoided death, their movements growing sharper, their teamwork stronger. The crowd, once filled with doubt, now grew restless with surprise. This was no accident. The blind princess and the human moved as one. At last, the beast reared back, preparing for one final strike. Its red eyes glowed brighter, and it let out a roar that shook the arena. Lyra listened carefully. She could hear the beast's chest expanding, the scrape of its claws digging deep into the ground, the rush of air through its throat. Samir, she whispered quickly, its weakness is under the neck. When it charges, strike there. Samir nodded, gripping his staff tightly. His legs trembled, but his heart was steady. The beast thundered forward, claws raised to crush him. At the final moment, Lyra cried, now. Samir leapt aside, swung his staff upward with all his strength, and drove it into the soft spot beneath the beast's neck. The creature roared in pain, stumbling back. It thrashed, then finally collapsed onto the stone floor with a heavy crash. Silence filled the arena. For a moment, no one spoke. Then gasps spread through the crowd, followed by cheers. Samir stood, breathing hard, sweat running down his face. Lyra, though blind, lifted her chin proudly. Together, they had done the impossible. The king rose from his seat, his deep voice echoing across the arena. The trial is complete. The bond is proven. My daughter, Princess Lyra, and her chosen partner, Samir of Earth, have shown strength beyond doubt. The nobles bowed their heads, shamed by their earlier laughter. The people cheered loudly, some even calling Lyra's name. For the first time in her life, she was not hidden, not ignored. She was honored. The Draxian envoy clenched his fists in anger but could not deny what he had seen. This changes nothing, he hissed. But his words carried no weight. The trial was sacred, and they had won. That night, in the quiet of her chamber, Lyra sat with Samir once more. Her voice was soft, filled with wonder. "You trusted me," she said. Samir smiled, though tired. "And you guided me. We faced it together. That is what a bond is meant to be." Lyra reached for his hand and held it tightly. For years, she had felt only silence and shame. Now, she felt strength, not her own alone, but theirs together. "Samir," she whispered, "you have given me more than sight. You have given me a future." And in that moment, they both knew their bond was no longer just a promise. It was the beginning of something that could change two worlds. The trial had ended, and the arena was quiet now. The sun dipped low behind the silver towers of Vera, painting the sky with colors Lyra could only imagine. The crowd had left, but whispers of what had happened spread far and wide across the kingdom. Princess Lyra stood with Samir at her side. Her chest lifted with pride, her head held high. She had faced fear, danger, and doubt, and she had not faltered. And she had not been alone. The king approached slowly, his usual stern expression softened. He reached out, placing a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "You have shown us all," he said quietly, "that strength is not measured by sight, nor by the power of arms alone. You, my daughter, have shown courage and wisdom beyond any warrior I have known." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. She had waited years for these words, not from the court, but from her father. And now, they were here. Samir stepped forward, bowing slightly before the king. "It is not only her courage, your majesty," he said. "It is the strength we found together. Alone, neither of us could have done it. But together, we succeeded." The king nodded, a small smile appearing for the first time in many months. "Then let it be known," he declared. "This human is honored as the chosen partner of Princess Lyra. Their bond is a symbol not only of unity, but of vision beyond the eyes." The court erupted in quiet murmurs. Some nobles, still cautious, bowed their heads. Others stared in disbelief. But the people of Vera, hearing the news, cheered loudly. For generations, they had valued power and strength above all. Now, they saw that courage and loyalty could come from unexpected places. Lyra looked up at Samir. "You stayed by me," she said softly. "Even when others would not. You trusted me, even when my own people hesitated." Samir took her hand in his. "I did because I saw you, Lyra. Not your blindness. Not your weakness. I saw the person who could guide, teach, and inspire. That is worth more than any weapon." Her smile was gentle but filled with confidence. "Then we will continue together," she said. "Not just for ourselves, but for Vera. Perhaps the people will learn something from us, that seeing with the heart is stronger than seeing with the eyes." The days that followed were filled with change. Samir was no longer just a translator. He became a trusted advisor to the princess, helping her understand not only the humans' ways but also guiding Vera toward new ideas. Lyra, too, began to speak openly to the court, sharing her thoughts and decisions. Where once there had been doubt and whispers, there was now respect. Nobles who had once avoided her sought her counsel. Soldiers who had ignored her presence now listened closely. And the people of Vera began to see their princess not as fragile, but as a leader. One evening, as they walked together through the palace gardens, Lyra reached out to touch the petals of the glowing flowers. Samir followed her movements carefully, describing the colors, the shapes, the way the petals curved in the soft light. "Your world is beautiful," Lyra said quietly, smiling. "Even in my mind, I can imagine it clearly. And your world is even more beautiful to me, Samir replied. Because you taught me that strength is not in the arms alone. It is in courage, in trust, and in heart. As night fell, the stars appeared in the sky, each one twinkling faintly. Lyra raised her hand as if she could touch them, imagining their glow. Samir stood beside her, silent but steady. Together, they had faced fear and danger. Together, they had shown that trust and loyalty could overcome prejudice and doubt. And together, they were ready to guide their worlds into a future brighter than any star. In time, stories of the blind princess and the human who saw her for who she truly was spread across the galaxies. Songs were sung, tales were told, and generations would remember the courage that came not from strength alone, but from the heart. For Lyra, the loneliness of her past was gone. She had found a partner who believed in her, and a place in the world that no one could take away. And for Samir, the human who had dared to approach her, he had found something rare, a bond of trust, respect, and love that bridged not only two hearts, but two worlds. As the night air cooled and the palace lights glowed softly, they stood together on the balcony, hand in hand. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the beginning of a new chapter not only for a princess and a human, but for all who would learn that true vision comes from the heart, and true courage comes from standing together. And so, a new era began on Vera. One of respect, unity, and hope. A human and a blind princess had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be strong.